So welcome to today's morning class. So in today's morning class, we are going to be looking at an important topic which is repeated in your exams. So be sure to pay particular attention as we are discussing this topic today. So before I start, don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss out any upcoming videos in preparation for your GCE examination. Also, don't forget to like if the video is helpful to you so that you can encourage me to make more videos like this. And don't forget to share this video to your friends who may also need help in this topic. So to begin, today we are going to be talking about transport across the cell membrane. How do substances move in and out of the cell via the cell membrane? Because in the first video we talked about the cell membrane being selectively permeable, meaning it can allow some substances to close and leave the cell while denying other substances. So now today we are going to understand now how the substances basically move in and out of the cell. So to begin, we said that we are going to be looking at transport across the cell membrane. So what should come into your mind whenever you hear transport across the cell membrane? So whenever you hear transport across the cell membrane, you should be thinking about three things. One, you should be thinking about diffusion. Two, you should be thinking about osmosis. Three, you should be thinking about the active transport. So these are the three transports which occur across what? The cell membrane. So these three transports help substances to close the what? The cell membrane. So without wasting much of your time, we are going to start by looking at our first mode of transport, which is diffusion. So what comes into your mind whenever you hear the word diffusion? So whenever we hear the word diffusion, what should come into our mind? This is just the movement of particles from the region of higher concentration to the region of lower concentration. So diffusion, remember, has to deal with what? Particles. So this is how you can define diffusion. So you can say diffusion is the what? The movement. So diffusion is the I can say diffusion is the movement of particles from the region of higher concentration to the region of lower concentration. Until the equilibrium is reached. So remember, whenever we are talking about diffusion, you have to define it in terms of what? Particles moving from where a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration. So diffusion, you can imagine, for example, you have bought a new perfume and you have sprayed yourself that perfume. So meaning that perfume on your body, it has what? A higher concentration. Meaning wherever you go, that perfume will start diffusing into the surrounding where the concentration is what? Is low. Meaning the people in the surrounding where the perfume is not, they'll start hearing the perfume because you have entered that place. Meaning diffusion is occurring. So whenever you have a region of higher concentration, you have more of the perfume will start moving to the lower concentration where the perfume isn't present. That's why you smell the perfume whenever someone enters the room, because the perfume diffuses. Yeah, and what you need to understand when you're talking about diffusion, it has no selective permeable membrane to allow the movement. So diffusion can occur without the membrane. Yeah, that is one important thing you need to understand. So now we have understood the definition of diffusion. We are going to look at some of the factors which can affect the rate at which a particle diffuses, or factors affecting what? Diffusion. So what are some of the factors which affect diffusion? So we have the first factor, which is the concentration gradient. So what is the concentration gradient? So whenever we are talking about the concentration gradient, this is the difference between the particles of the two regions. So you are saying this is the difference in concentration. When we have a region which has low, let's say for example, you have entered the loom, meaning that loom has zero concentration of the perfume you are wearing, while you yourself have more than 50. Let's say you have sprayed a lot of perfume, meaning your perfume on your body is a lot. So meaning the concentration gradient between your body and the room is what? High. That's what we are talking about when you say concentration gradient. The difference between the perfume on your body and the perfume in that environment. So if that environment had a bit of the perfume, we could have said that the concentration gradient was low, because if you subtract, you see that the concentration is low. So we are saying that the concentration gradient is the difference in concentration of the particles between two regions. Yeah. So if we have the higher concentration gradient, leads to higher diffusion rate. So this is what you need to know. So when you have a higher concentration gradient, it will lead to a higher diffusion rate. Then the second factor is the surface area. Surface area of the diffusion surface. So what do we mean when you say surface area of the diffusion surface? So now where diffusion is taking place, that surface, the area of that surface also affects what? The rate at which the particle diffuses. For example, if we have a small surface area, meaning our diffusion will be what? Low. But if we have a higher surface area will have a higher rate of diffusion. So meaning higher surface area increases the rate of diffusion. Yeah. So this is our second factor which affect the rate at which substances diffuse. Next is the thickness of the diffusing surface. So how now does the thickness of the diffusing surface affect the diffusion rate? So here we're talking about the thickness of diffusion surface. So the diffusion surface can be any surface which allows what? Diffusion. So meaning if that surface is thick, particles will find it challenging to move. Let's say for example, our diffusing surface is, we have two diffusing surfaces. We have this one and we also have this one. So if you compare, this surface is thick and this surface is thin. So just by using our common sense, we can conclude that particles will find it easier to pass through this thin surface than this thick surface. So this brings us to our third factor, which says thin surface increases the rate of diffusion. While a thick surface reduces the rate of diffusion. So these are the points which you should be writing in your S. So they can write the factors which affect the rate of diffusion, 6 marks. This is what you should be writing. Then we have the fourth one, which is the common one, temperature. So how does temperature affect the rate of diffusion? We know that when we increase the temperature, increase. So this symbol means increase. Increase in temperature increases the kinetic energy, which in turn increases the speed of the particles. So when the particles increases, of course, diffusion will do what? Will increase. So therefore, increase in temperature increases the kinetic energy, which increases the rate of diffusion. Yeah, so these are some of the factors which affect the rate of diffusion. So some factors, I've included them in the PDF for notes. So this is just an explanation to help you as you are going through those notes. So what have we covered so far? So I've looked at diffusion. We have defined what diffusion is. We say this, the movement of particles from a region of higher concentration to the region of lower concentration. Meaning particles will move where they are not present. Then 2, we looked at the factors where we talked about the concentration gradient, talked about the surface area. We also talked about the thickness of the diffusion surface. We also talked about what? Temperature. Next, we are going to talk about the importance of what? Of osmosis. I mean the importance of diffusion. So why is diffusion important? That's our next topic for discussion. Okay, so moving on now to the importance of diffusion. Why is diffusion important? So there are a lot of importance of diffusion which we can talk about, but in our video today we are going to discuss just 3. Then the rest I've provided in the PDF. So be sure to go through the PDF. Yeah. So the first important of diffusion is oxygen. So for oxygen to move from the lungs to the blood and from the blood to the tissue, it needs what? Diffusion. So our first importance is movement. So we say that diffusion is important because it allows the movement of oxygen from the lungs to the blood and the tissues. So without diffusion, oxygen cannot move from the lungs to the blood and to the tissue. So that's the first thing which you need to understand. Then the second importance is dissolved food. So also for dissolved food to move from the blood to the tissues, it needs what? Diffusion. So here we are only talking about the movement of what? Oxygen, the movement of dissolved food, and the movement of carbon dioxide. So we know that whenever the tissue are done utilizing their food, they release a waste product which is known as what? Carbon dioxide. So this carbon dioxide, for it to be transported out from the cell, back into the blood and back to the lungs, it needs what? Diffusion. So again, you can say for the movement of carbon dioxide from the tissues into the blood and back to the lungs. Yeah, so these are some of the importance of diffusion which you need to understand as you are revising your biology. So be sure to stick through as we will try to solve a question which came on diffusion and osmosis. So for my part 2, I'll be talking about osmosis, where I will cover osmosis, some effects of osmosis, where I'll talk about the hypotonic solution, isotonic solution, and hypertonic. So be sure you hit the subscribe button and click the bell icon so that you don't miss our next video on what? Osmosis.